What up? What up? Back to basics today. We're going to talk about simplifying rational expressions. Now, something that's rational is a fraction. When you have a number divided by a number, usually what you do is you try to, in a sense, maybe you don't do this, but you think, let's factor out the greatest common factor. So I'm going to do that. I'm thinking outside the box a little bit. It would be better if I thought using a pen. So I'm going to factor out the greatest common factor, which appears in this case to be a 12. So factor out a 12 up top in the numerator and downstairs in the denominator. And if I factor out a 12 from 24, I'm left with 2. And I factor out a 12 from 36, I'm left with 3. Now, if you're multiplying straight across the numerator or multiplying straight across the denominator, anything that's identical, ignore that bell, gets eliminated. And so I'm left with just 2 and 3. Now, again, a lot of people would be like, well, I usually just divide everything by 2 or whatever, something like that. But this is how I'm going to approach everything today. I'm going to factor as much as I can and eliminate. So that's where we're headed. So if I have letters involved, all right, I have a greatest common factor that I can factor out. And that's going to be, let me see, 8. Factor out 8. I can factor out 8. When I factor out an 8, I'm left with 4. You know what? I can also factor out an n. Down here, I can also factor out an n. So let's do that. Factor out an 8 and an n. When I factor out an 8 and an n on top, when I divide the 8 from the 32, I have a 4. When I take one n away from another n, I have 4n. And when I factor an 8n out of 24, I have a 3. These guys cancel out. And I'm left with 4n over 3. Now, a lot of people might say, like, okay, well, I have 2 n's up here. Let's cross that out. And now I'm left with just the n, and 32 over 24 simplifies. However you want to work it, but I'm trying to factor out things that are the same. I'm trying to factor out things that are the same so I can cross that out. That's the point. That's why I factored out 8n, because I knew I had an n in common and I had an 8. Essentially, I'm finding the greatest common factor in the numerator and the denominator, factoring that out so I can get rid of it. That's what I did. All right. Nothing to factor upstairs. Nothing at all. However, downstairs, I can factor out a 3, so I have 3x squared minus 12x, so I have a 3 in common with both. I have an x in common with both. So let's factor out a 3x. When I factor out a 3x out of 3x squared, that leaves me with just an x. Minus comes along for the ride. If I factor a 3 out of 12, that's a 4. And if I factor an x out of an x, that's it. Now, why is this good news? Because I have one thing living upstairs, and that one thing is x minus 4. Downstairs, I have 3x times x minus 4, which means I can eliminate the x minus 4s. See it? If I eliminate everything on one side, I'm left with just a 1. And on the bottom, I have just a 3x. And so that's my answer. How about that? Catch me outside. How about that? Every time I do a pun, an angel gets its wings. That's what that ding was for. All right. You know, it would be very wrong for me to just cross these out. You can cross things out if you're adding and subtracting. And if you're like, but you were subtracting in the last problem, I turned it into a multiplication problem where I had one thing upstairs over something times something. And it just so happens the one thing up here was the same as the one thing down there, and that's why I was allowed to cross out. Here, I'm not allowed to just be like, cross out the x squareds because they're the same. No, I need to turn it into a multiplication problem. So I'm going to attempt to factor the numerator. So I need to come up with two numbers whose sum is 8, whose product is 12. So that would be the 4 and 4? No. 6 and 2. So x plus 6, x plus 2. Dos. Down here, I need to come up with two numbers that add up to positive 3, but multiply out to negative 18. So let's do x minus 3 and x plus 6. Now I have this times that over this times that. Ooh, something upstairs is the same exact thing as something downstairs, so let's cross them out. And that leaves me with x plus 2 over x minus 3. Now, before you're like, cross those out, cross those x's out, you can't because you're adding and subtracting in the numerator and the denominator, and you can't do that. You can't. Just can't do it. What I can do is one more problem. Now, right away up here, I notice that I can factor out a 3 out of everything. So let's do that. Let's factor a 3 out of everything. After I factor a 3 out of that, I have r squared minus 13r plus 30. Let's factor the bottom, the denominator. Two numbers that multiply out to negative 70 but add up to negative 3. How about r minus 10, r plus 3? Can't cross anything out. I have 3 times stuff over something times something. But you know what? That stuff up there looks like I can factor it. Can I come up with two numbers that add up to negative 13 but multiply out to 30? Sure can. How about r minus 3 and r minus 10? That's going to be over r minus 10 in parentheses minus 10, that's supposed to be a 10, wow, times r plus 3. You cross out. Now I have 3 parentheses r minus 3 over r plus 3. And if you're thinking, let's cross out the r's, you can't. What I can do is I can distribute that back to get 3r minus 9 over r plus 3. And even though you see a lot of similarities between these, you can't do any more with that. You're done. Simplifying rationals. Easy as pumpkin pie on a summer morning. I don't know what that means. Thank you. Bye.